It's Eve 2020, May 25th, and I am Metteral. So let's talk about EVE Online. We'll go right to where we usually start, the PCU. I'll check out this, gotten up to 38,000. That's below the 42,000 that we were seeing a few days ago. Let's open up that week and see what happened. Yeah, it peaked up here a couple times over 40. This week's been a little bit lower. I wonder what happened that last week. Might have been some pent-up desire to play based on the lower numbers the week before that. So we had a week of DDoS attacks that you could see suppress the numbers here. And then after that, you saw it really bounce back hard and peak over 42. Over here is like 40. Can't get to that point, but it was 42,000 last week, and now it's settled back to about the 38,000 mark. So we'll see what's going on. Not exactly sure. Actually, if you look, there's a nice trend for a few weeks of over 40,000 players playing at the same time. That's PCU. That just means that people are playing same time of the day all together at one time. So it's 42,000 players at one time. But throughout the day, there's thousands and tens of thousands of players that are constantly logging in and logging out. One thing I noticed that kind of concerned me was that there was that seemed to be kind of a dip off of new accounts being created here, and that can be a good or bad thing because people who are creating bots will create lots of new accounts, clearly, because they're using them, and then they get deleted and they create new ones. So this could be a good sign that, you know, the bot makers are taking off and doing something else. Could also be a loss of enthusiasm for people trying EVE Online, or they've gotten all the Korean players that are going to try this. Who knows what it could be, but it's probably more than likely a combination of things, and probably, I would say, people not wanting to make botting accounts. Who knows? Can't really say for sure. But it looks like it's recovered. It used to have a downward trend here. You see that, and then it's gone back up. So that's the last 48 hours. The last week is what I looked at last time. And then if you look at the last 6 months, you can see that dip there. But it looks like it's leveled off and it's on its way back up. Okay, those new players. And that's PCU. So let's move on to Dotlan. Hey, any of you guys have any thoughts on the PCU before I move on?
Yeah, one of the things I was looking at is if you look at the top graph there where it shows the daily changes.
Hold on, let me
the
turn you up.
swings. I
Let me
would
turn you up 1
love
second.
to see the time zones where those peak current users are peaking at, like where the different metrics are, overlaid as a color graph so that we can see where we're seeing those big dips. Is that Asia Pacific where the numbers are falling through the Australian time zone and then peaking again as it hits Australia or it hits Europe and then through to North America? Like, that's one thing that's missing from this graph, is that we don't see the time zone based data around peak current user on a daily basis. And I mean, like over the past 3 months, you can tell when weekends are happening because you see those spikes in activity and then it falls off again. But it's interesting to be able to know what's happening on the daily in terms of time zone and what does that shift look like, so that we know like where are the majority of players coming from when they log in.
Well, this is measured in Eve time. We call it Eve time, but it's basically UTC, Universal Time. You can see that the peak is usually around 1800, or actually this time it's up around 2000. Yeah, I would say starts at 18, ends at about 21. That's normally your
So
peak
like
time.
late EU, early
Yeah.
East Coast United States.
Yeah, it's usually when the US and EU kind of overlap.
Yeah, people getting out of school or end of their workday and end of the evening for EU people.
Right. That's usually when timers are set. That's usually when people want to have the big set piece battles. If you want to fight, you want to set them, or you want to attack and have them set on a weekend at about 1800. If you don't want to fight, you find the most distant time zone from that, which would be like Australian nighttime time zone for everyone. So if you wanted to defend yourself, you would set your timers for your structures down here in the basically midnight UTC. So it's is that right? 2 midnight UTC or 5 in the morning? Yeah, the wee hours of the morning. That's when there's least amount of people on, so that's how you defend yourself, is you keep their numbers low. Okay, anyway. Anything else on this? Let's move on. Moving over to statistics today. Let's look at the most violent regions in the last 24 hours. Lone Trek continues to be hot in Empire space with 3,251 ships destroyed. The Forge in second place, 2,452, and the Citadel in third, 2,603. All those numbers are pretty healthy for ganking if you're looking for that sort of stuff. So it's most of those numbers are casualties of the aggressors who try to take on freighters. They end up losing a lot of ships. Not very valuable ships, but they lose a lot. In 0-0, Providence is at the top of the list with 2,029 ships destroyed, 1,300 pods destroyed. That's a lot of podding going on. And in second place, about 50% the number of Providence is Pureblind, and Pureblind has 988 ships destroyed with 669 pods destroyed. And then finally, at Kalevala Expanse, 1,000 ships destroyed, 1,005 to be exact, 600 pods destroyed. Those are all areas where there are conflicts. Maybe Kalevala Expanse isn't, but Providence, we were looking at it last week saying something's going on here. And sure enough, it's a big fight. I think over a 9 UI, I want to say 9 UI structure. Let's have a look here. Thanks, Apollo. Oh, this must be the Pureblind fight. We'll get to that in a second. Going to Providence first. I heard about this fight yesterday. I hit the wrong thing. I hit the ship called Providence. I was like, why are all these freighters getting killed? Because that's the wrong Providence. That's the right Providence. We're looking for, or scanning for fleet fighting. That's where you see a lot of the same ships like here. Once you find those, you isolate one and then you hit related, and that will group up everything killed at the same time. That does not look right. Only 14 ships. I had this battle report, but I didn't. These are all small skirmishes, but this is not what's been going on in Providence. There was a big fight happening there. And somebody gave me the information. I just can't find it. I'm not complaining, but there's a lot of information that comes through, and Discord, there's no good way to capture information off Discord, because especially if you get a lot of it. Well, this fight was happening, I believe, yesterday around this time, so it's been about 24 hours. Let's look at Providence in general. One of these buttons is the stats. Here we go. Can't seem to find what I'm looking for here. Yeah, okay. Anyway, sorry, can't dig it up. There's a big fight happened in Providence yesterday, about 24 hours ago. So that ended up being what we thought it would be. It's big numbers showing up there. As far as pure blind, let's go to that. This is from Apollo 428. Thanks. He gave us this battle report where looks like Horde took on Imperium or Goon Swarm mostly with wow, that is a lopsided loss for Imperium again. This is the second one. They've had some victories, but they had a pretty crushing defeat with like a 4% efficiency. This time they're at 18% efficiency. And that's not a big deal. Normally you can see an 18, like you only get 18% of the victory, basically. That's what that efficiency is, how much ISK. Not how many ships were destroyed, but how much ISK was destroyed. And that's not even telling you the full picture, right? That's only telling you like how much fortune was lost or sacrificed for this fight. You still want to look at the objective, that they get the military objective. But those two things combined usually paint the picture of was it a good day or a bad day and for who. But the efficiency rating is about 18-20% here. And that is not normally bad. The problem I see here is... Oh, okay, I misread that. The ISK loss was 330 billion compared to 74 billion, 76 billion. I thought there were... Oh, okay, never mind. I thought something different. So I thought that it was that Goon Swarm and the Imperium had twice as many ships as Horde and still lost with that kind of a ratio. And then that would be a bad loss. But this is not the case. What's true here is the opposite, that actually Goon Swarm and Imperium were outformed by twice the number. So yeah, they're going to lose. They're going to get 20% efficiency when they're fighting twice the number. So it looks like a dread bomb just got dialed back. All those dreads in red here lost. That's a lot of... That's why it's 330 billion in ISK. That's a huge capital fleet. Most of it lost. Let's see, in the monitor here is Kosikek. That's probably an alt for somebody that we already know, whether it be Jay Amazingness or Ash, somebody, some FC. Danny Snyder's, no, that's not, that's just a tackler. Anyway, ouch. That's a pretty ugly feed, yeah. That's Apollo's words. Yeah, 330 billion, that's not, it's just... The thing is, I don't see a lot of Horde dying. I don't know how they lost 75 billion. There must be a subcap fleet. Oh, here they are. Here's some Moros that got taken out. Yeah, but it looks like mostly subcaps. Right. So at the end of analyzing that, it looks like it was a pretty ugly feed. We don't know how the fight went down, but at the end of the day, Imperium had about 250. Looks like half of that was a Dread fleet, capital fleet. And Horde, Northern Coalition, and I guess Conifers are right up there with 50 people in this fleet. They ended up having about 460. A lot of dreads too, so it was, could have been a counter dread drop. A lot of revelations I'm seeing on both sides. That's the dread of choice, I suppose. It used to be the Naglfar. Yeah, I don't know. No way to. A loss is a loss. 330 billion is 330 billion. 18% efficiency. That's not a good day for Imperium. Let's put it that way. So it was a straight fight. I'm hearing without supers, and that's interesting because the Imperium these days, I think it's pretty well known. Is the group with Legacy Coalition helping them, is the group that can put down the last card, the biggest card, because they have the biggest super capital fleet in the game by far. But if you start collecting PandaFam groups like Horde and NC Dot and PL and Fraternity as well, and Fraternity's allies, and maybe even a Siege Green or a Conifers in there, you start to get a more even picture of forces that can be deployed. In this case, nobody's using super capital ships, so those final cards are off the table. So now they're playing with different cards, and in this case, Pandemic Horde. So we're going down to a lower tier of capital ships. That's dreadnoughts and carriers, and it looks like a lot of forces could be brought to bear by Pandemic Horde and NC Dot there. So let's see the resulting kill board if we can. Oh, that's for something else. Why are you feeding me that, Maverick, at this moment? All right, so that's it in Pure. That's a big loss of capital ships for the Imperium in FTAC N. I'm not sure what they were fighting over there, but not a good day for them. Okay, going on to Kalevala Expanse. I just want to take a quick peek at this. Sorry, I've been stumbling around the first two battle zones, but let's see. The Kalevala Expanse will normally get into areas where ships are being destroyed, but not always, unless there's a significant. Now that is the home area of Horde. You see, there's a lot of Horde killing things that are coming into their area, but I want to see if there was actually a fleet collision of some sort, or if it was just stuff that trickled in over a day. Looks like Legion of X Death was active in there, but I don't know if that was just a couple guys. Unreal Alliance. Let's just pick one of these at random. Battleship usually doesn't fly alone. It's usually in a fleet. No, this one flew alone. That's it's just got picked off. He might have been ratting. Let's go back a bit more. Well, I don't see it, so what I'm looking for is uniformity in ships. So when I see a lot of the same ship, that means it's a fleet. Normally, I'm talking 10 or more, and then I can zero in on what those ships were involved with, and normally that opens up the bigger picture of a battle. But unable to find that, so Kalevala Expanse at 1,000 ships destroyed over the last 24 hours. Let's look at the systems. Maybe it gives us a little more information. So the most violent systems in nullsec in the past 24 hours, of course, is 9UY, which is what I was trying to say about Providence. That system is in Providence, and that had 1,500 ships destroyed in the last 24 hours. And let's click on that. I think we can see here, if we zero in on this, this is a popular station. The peak fight happened about 18 hours ago. These are jumps coming in, and then ships destroyed, over 600 ships destroyed at the same time 18 hours ago. Yeah, so we talked about that. Let's back out to FTAC N. That's the Dread battle that we just saw. That is basically 3 jumps out of XTAC 7, where the majority of the fighting is going on. Let's zoom in on that. And so this battle happened just about 12 hours ago. So it's like 8 p.m. That's why I didn't hear of it. I was probably off. Hundreds and hundreds of ships were destroyed, as we saw. Wild. And I don't see anything like that. Well, here it is, Calavel Expanse. Again, it's Rio. Rio is the staging for, it's not staging, but it's the home of Horde. So if we click on Rio, we can see that it's lots of jumps throughout the day. It's not just one peak, it's over 500 ships jumping through every hour. Just people being tourists coming through, a lot of fighting going on, a lot of ratting going on. But here's the 2 fights, ships killed in the last 48 hours, and you can see there's upwards of 60 and then 80 at a different time, and those are 2 different fights. So that kind of answers that question. It's probably 2 different fights. I don't know if any of them were major because the destruction was under 100 ships. So okay. So those are the most violent systems in nullsec and Empire space. If we look at lowsec, which is going to get hot, it's going to get hot tomorrow. Well, I don't know if lowsec's going to get hot, but all of Empire space is going to be very interesting starting tomorrow as CCP puts in the May update. We're going to see.
Are they still calling that kicking down castles?
Yes, that's part of it, right? That's part of it. But that's not the part I'm talking about, because that's going to happen all over the place. What's happening tomorrow is, well, I don't know what it's called. It's phase 3 or chapter 3 of incursion invasion.
Oh, the Triglavian.
Yeah. So Triglavians are going to they're going to change. I don't know where they're at now. And I don't know if this is a problem. It might be working as planned, where players are confused about what's going to happen. I don't know how much confusion they want. I think they want people to know that cool things are going to happen, but not know exactly what they are. And that's kind of the state that we're in. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we know that cool things are going to happen. And so the map is going to change permanently as Triglavians start to take over systems. And Edencom, which is a unified group of NPCs, all the empires combined basically, start to fight back and take control of those systems from the Triglavians. So will certain systems in Empire space belong to Triglavians and totally disrupted for travel? In other words, they become low security systems? Or will they be reconquered by Edencom and recaptured and repacified and become high security systems again? That's the kind of stuff that's going to start happening tomorrow.
Exciting.
Do we? So Nick asks, will the upcoming invasions also affect low and null? The answer, we don't know. We've been talking about it for a few weeks now, and we don't know where these are going to happen. We don't know. Somebody has an open mic.
Yeah.
I just moved him.
I'm trying. I'm trying. I have too many things open. Don't come in with an open mic. Thank you. So, yeah. So the answer is we don't know, because the information that we have is, first of all, stolen, as some of the guys that we talked to go into what's it called, Hobo Leaks or whatever, and they look at the server changes that have landed on your desktop, and there's this weird thing where they can tell what some of the new items coming in are. They look at the characteristics of the items and the descriptions, and then they piece the puzzles together and try to figure out what is it that is going to change and how is it going to change. And there's enough gaps in their knowledge to not know some of the essentials. Like, does this extend all the way out to nullsec? Is it just Empire space? Do we know what systems are going to be hit? Can we predict? And there's a group called Arataka. Is it Consortium?
Research Consortium.
Research Consortium. Yeah, ARC, basically. And you've seen their videos. If you haven't, you should check them out. They really polished, beautiful things. This is like scientists of EVE Online. They literally pour through the facts that are so hard to discover, and they collect them and they piece these puzzles together for you. And they're just really literally like scientists when it comes to EVE Online, at least the backstory. And they have uncovered that the Triglavians are probably going to favor blue suns. And you could see that in the Eclipse video that came out. And they've mapped out some of the systems that have blue suns that also have other characteristics that the Triglavians seem to like. And so you end up with predictions on what systems will be taken over. And there's a few systems that are kind of critical to the area that they're in that you can't travel through that system. If you can't travel through that system, going around it is more difficult than others. Some, it's very inconsequential. They're kind of systems off onto the side. In particular, there's about 3 or 4 systems that will make travel through that area different. Will actually change the landscape of that area. You'll have to go around the system unless you want to go through low sec, which is more dangerous. But one system in particular that we're looking at that we assume something might happen in is Narsia. And if Narsia goes down, that breaks the link between 2 massive trade hubs, which is, of course, Jeddah and Amar trade hub. And going around that will make Amar essentially a lot less supplied than usual. And so that could be good or bad depending on if you're a buyer or a seller. And we'll just have to see what actually happens there. That's a prediction. We don't know if that's going to happen. CCP certainly hasn't announced what systems will be taken over. But they have announced this is a permanent change in that this kind of thing will happen from now on. So there won't be any stability of Empire space in the way that we've had it before. This is our last day of certainty about systems sec status. All right. We didn't do this on Saturday. We probably should have. So SOV changes for alliances. Northern Coalition picked up 7 systems. I'm sure those are all in the same system because Skeleton Crew here, which was essentially a partner of NC Dot, loses 7 systems. I'm sure that's a trade, and I think it's, yes, the Spire. I think we talked about that. All those systems are probably exactly the same ones Skeleton Crew lost in the Spire. There they are. Skeleton Crew, again, is one of those groups that I think it's Pansafam? I forget. He's the leader. When he comes around, Skeleton Crew is formed up. When he takes off, that falls apart. Or people go somewhere else.
That's Sam's group.
Right. Evictus picked up 2 systems, lost 2. And let's see. Everything else is very small moves as far as SOV. The big story over this week was PIRAT, or Pirate, has disbanded. I think the leader and a lot of the Pirate personnel have gone different ways, but the group itself has closed. What's interesting here is Black Legion triple dots. So Black Legion seems to have gone back down to 39 members. So Black Legion lost 400. Let's take a closer look at Black Legion. I know they were kicking around recently, but I wasn't sure. That's another group kind of forms around Elo Knight, popular FC. We'll take a look at the corporations. See when corps left. It was really just one corp, Origin, that took off from there. Origin is Black Legion's main corporation. It's run by Elo Knight. And their alliance history, you can see they pop in and out of alliances, but normally they joined Fraternity probably on contract, and that was for the better part of 2000. It was 2018. I don't know why it's 2019 here. Maybe they officially joined later, but they were fighting for Fraternity before that, or alongside Fraternity before that. So that contract looked like it's over. They went back and formed Black Legion again, and then recently this corporation left Black Legion. So I don't know what that's about, but probably it's a. We'll probably know in a few weeks what's going on with Black Legion. There's not much left in there, and these are probably just holding corporations. But Origin is Black Legion, so if they're not in there, it's not really Black Legion. Let's see, defensive disorder. Looks like they're accumulating a lot of corporations. They're up to 600 members. Defense order mayhem doom. Let's see what corporations there that are in here. I usually go for the big one. Student Council, 350. Okay, let's see if they have an alliance history. No, they're created for Doom. So dedicated to creating long-lasting memories with close friends, hoping to show new players. Okay, so maybe it's a new player group, but Doom is getting off to a good start. Looks like. Silent Company picks up another 300. These guys are no longer a surprise. They are a conglomeration of high-sec players, and they're up to 23,000. They've doubled in the last few months. Let's look at that, actually. That corporations, actually, we'll go to changes. No, I think it's statistics, yeah. You can see that they kicked around. It's actually back up in time. So at the beginning of the year, they were about under 10,000. And since then, they had a break here in February. I think they were under war deck, so they had to break. And that is not a loss of players. That is essentially a maneuver to keep their members protected. And so when they reconstituted, they grew back to their size rather quickly. But now they've really scaled and continue to scale. And it looks like what they were doing is recruiting players, but they created a threshold that created enough players to make it safe. And now you're seeing a recruitment of corporations. You see their corporations doubled, not just that. I think that's part of the story. Their corporations might have expanded in order to protect themselves from takeover as well. So you just have to look at the corporations to see what size they are. Yeah, so that's their corporate number doubling. You see all these votes here. This is just a maneuver to keep control of the alliance so that corporations don't outvote the executor. It's a protective mechanism. It's immersive gameplay, not immersive, but emergent gameplay. Players discovered how to do this. I think Goonswarm pioneered this a long time ago. But it's also kind of shows like, it's disappointing the game can't handle that. Like, if you put 8 corporations together, they all get one vote to say who the lead is, who the executor is of that corporation.
You're touching upon a lot of broken, bad corp systems that have been here for a long time that, to be fair, CCP have said is almost impossible to sort out. So
I think it is without fundamentally breaking the game. If you think about, if anybody knows databases, and just the way cells work and granularity, all these permissions are all mixed up together. I think the way they theorized organization was like on a corporation level. And then early on in EVE Online, they managed to form alliance entities with corporate structures. With corporate permissions. And what happened is the players grow bigger and collect each other more. And so now essentially when you talk about a group, you talk about their identity as a coalition, right? We talk about Imperium as a coalition. We talk about PandaFam as a coalition. We try to break it down to alliances, but we never break it down to corporations unless there's only one corporation that represents a group like Horde, for instance. So the permission structure was not intended to grow this big. I think they intended to have people running corporations, and that would be the group. And then you might ally with other corporations and create treaties in the form of an alliance. And then that would be as big a structure as you would put together. So a lot of the permissions are at the corporate level, not the alliance level. But it's a democracy in any alliance. So if there are 10 member corporations, each one of those gets a vote. So what they do here is they basically create a bunch of dummy corporations to get multiple votes to make sure that the people who own this alliance, always have the majority of corporations on their side. This is something that this is something Brave did not want to do because they didn't want to play that game. And I appreciate that they didn't. But this also caused them to have a coup that threw out their leader, who has since passed away, actually, in real life. And so when they threw out their leader, there was a counter coup that put him back in power. And then they did this sort of a model where they created a bunch of dummy accounts and handed them over to the leader. And so then he constantly had 51% or more of the shares. Yeah, they're shares, not votes. They translate to votes, but because these are corporations, they're shares. So it's like holding shares in a corporation in real life. It's kind of the same thing. So that's what's going on there. The reason I think I thought it was new corporations coming in, and it is, you only need to create dummy accounts to overcome the amount of new corporations you're inviting in. So you have 10 corporations and you have 11 dummy accounts or dummy corporations. You own 51% of all the corporations. But if you invite 5 new corporations in, that's 16 corporations versus your 11. You've just lost majority, so you have to put more in. So whatever new corporations come in, you're adding corporations in order to overcome their majority. So that will grow fast. So that might have been only 5 new corporations that came in, but you probably have 20 new corporations on paper. Someday we'll actually dive into corporate life. They've tried to fix those. That was on their roadmap a while ago, and they just couldn't overcome. Or they managed to untangle the structures enough from corporate permissions and created a whole new model with permissions list or access list as opposed to permissions. So they started making, I think, instead of fixing what is already there and trying to untangle it without breaking things, they created a parallel system for access to structures and permissions on what people could do with structures, and that allows players to be a little more diverse in who they can have coming into their structures and stuff. All right, last part of this is most violent systems in HiSec. Looks like Idama had 1,000 ships destroyed. Woof. And most violent system. Where's Udama inside? Oh, that's a system. Oh, actually, these last 3 hours. Oh, yeah. So these are ganking alerts. Be careful in Narja and Udama. In the last 3 hours, they've had 170, 190 ships destroyed. So look out for that. That's a few ganks in the last hour. Okay, let's go over to the kills. Here's one of the ships. Freshly destroyed by these gankers, probably in the last 3 hours. You have a freighter, Obelisk, carrying 10 billion. That's worth a look. I just like to see what the cargo is, to see what people are moving. Like a lot of moon materials. You can see here mercury, silicates, cadmium. These are good amounts. 10,000 units of hafnium. Cadmium, 22,000. This is somebody intended to do some reactions with those minerals and probably create a slew of T2 technology. Yeah, neodymium. There's a way to say that. 10,000 or 9,500. Let's see. Tungsten. Cesium, 21,000 units. Yeah, this is all like, comes out to about 400 million for each of these things that they bought. So, yeah, in evaporate deposits, which is kind of a low-end mineral, you had 330 million ISK worth bought. So this is significant, and that's why it totals up to about 9 billion. So that kind of hurts for that industrialist, whoever that was. That was Mercury Solutions, or Mercuria Solutions. So sorry about that. Here you have like Force Auxiliary was destroyed in Genesis space. That's not a huge deal. It's at 12 billion. I wonder what was on that. These things are worth a lot less than that. Maybe 1/5. Get a faction capital armor repair. There's 500 million there. But this starts to add up. And yeah, there's a lot of officer modules. X types and B types, and these are all expensive. Total of 700 million there. Drones are only 52 million, and the rigs 400 million. Here's the billion, and that is the repairs. Warp core stabs on there. Yeah, so all that added up. So it's just a good fit. Oh, here's something. Had a lot of stuff in the cargo. Yeah, that's where it is. Close to 6 billion in the cargo. So I don't know if this thing was repairing or moving things. It looked like it might have been moving some things. And it's a lot of different items. And the fleet hangar had, yeah, another 2 billion. So this thing was just packed with gear inside of it. That looks like a move. So you have a ship that you use, and you've decided to move, so you pack it all into a working ship, and then when it gets destroyed, it looks like a working ship, but it was just a cargo ship at the time. It was moving. Yeah, so that might be what these inertial, what are they called? The stabs, the things that free you. These guys here, the warp core stabilizers. Yeah, he put a bunch of those on to get away, or to move this thing as quickly as possible. This would keep it from getting tackled. So I don't know what the story is there. Let's see who got him. So that was taken out by White Sky. Yeah, they dropped some dreads on him. Yeah, it's almost exclusively White Sky that took him out. So that must be a local group there. That's in Genesis. And so Patriot's taken out by White Sky. Another RIA, 10 billion. That's more like it. That's a jump freighter. It's worth about 9 of that 10 billion, so it doesn't matter what he was carrying. And the Fortizar went down in J space. That's Jovian space. For those that don't know, wormhole space. Wormhole Society took occupational hazards Fortizar out. Backing up further than that, you have an ARC, which is a jump freighter, losing 17 billion. So there was definitely some cargo in there. This looks like a lot of stuff. So this is definitely a move. God, this list goes on forever. So I get to the, yeah, 9 billion worth of various things. I don't see any one high price ticket here. So Jump Freighter was on the move. Warped Intentions was caught by Simple Farmers. Here's a rare ship destroyed that belonged to Test. It is a Marshall. That is a Black Ops ship designed by Concord, is it? And that was taken out.
Modification to the Amar Empire's Apocalypse class battleship.
Say that again. I didn't quite get that.
It's the Concord design modification to it was originally based on, the Marshall was originally based on the Amar Navy's Apocalypse class battleship, but it's Concord's version of that.
I didn't know that. So that's supposed to be, it doesn't look anything like Apocalypse.
The technical and engineering systems are based rather than the look is based on.
Oh, I see. Well, that's interesting. But that was a ship that was handed out to players who attended fan fests, both in Vegas and in Iceland that year. And I think you can. Is there another way to get those?
Project Discovery.
Say it again.
Project Discovery.
And you can earn them through Project Discovery, right? You have to uncover a lot of. You have to do a lot of
Yeah,
work
it's the
for those.
final tier reward. So once you finish Project Discovery, basically you get that.
Wow.
Yeah, once you've finished science, you can have a spaceship.
Well, it's work. They got a lot of what do they call those? Shadow planets or
Planetary
planets?
transits.
what were they?
Planetary transits. So it's foreign orbital bodies around suns.
Your voice is really low, Jurius, I gotta say. Can you speak up or turn it up? Maybe we're both low. We'll turn this up too. Let us know how our mics sound. Okay. Going on here with some of the kills, going through these kills. Fraternity loses Nyx in Oasa. And Army of Mango loses a Titan in that's an expensive Titan. We have to look at that.
Yep, the Vanquisher.
Yeah, that's why it's a Vanquisher. It's not Erebus. So this is a faction Titan. I believe Vanquishers come from Serpentis.
Yep.
These are hard to build. They take a ton of minerals, so they cost a lot.
For that one.
What's that?
Where did the blueprints for the factions the Pentis caps come from?
Not Sotios. They were around before that.
Yeah.
But I don't remember where it's not the blueprint that cost a lot. The blueprint will cost you, but it won't cost you as much as any of the other faction Titans. The reason this one is expensive, it just takes 10 times the minerals to build. So it is, these days,
Royalty points, okay.
really, really expensive to build these things. As minerals become more expensive, so does the Vanquisher and the Vendetta. Those two ships will stay very expensive as minerals stay expensive. This was taken out by Ivana trading. These guys are good at capturing. This guy was probably in transit.
Yeah, it was more than just Ivana. If you notice, you also see Rocket X and his guys on that kill mail, and it's in their area of operation rather than Ivana's. So
they got invited. Okay. Where was this knockdown? This was Army of Mango killed in my domain. Okay. Or in May.
Yeah, so when I saw the kill mail, it didn't look like they were killing each other. I'm guessing that Ivana tipped a rocket off that someone was coming in. And well, the story that I've heard about that Vanquisher sounded like he did everything wrong in how to move a super.
Yeah, that system is low sec domain. Let's look at that. That's not even in deep space. That's in low sec. Yeah, it's a little island. You'd think you're safe there because there's no other null sec, but Vanquisher killed there is surprising.
He bought the Vanquisher from one of I believe it's a director in Faucets, who in the Basgaran Keepstar, and I guess he was moving it to his home. And now that Faucets guy has been temporarily banned for pending an RMT investigation over this transaction.
Oh, interesting. So Army of Mango's probably a Chinese player, and so he bought this from one of the Faucets guys. Now, Faucets known for stealing supers. Like, they're really good at it. There's a couple of guys that are really good at it. I wonder if this is one of those guys. But in any case, you think the guy that sold this might have sold it for real money?
No.
Oh, okay.
They banned him because on the possibility that the person who bought the Titan used RMT to get the funds to.
Oh, I see. So the buyer came up with the ISK, possibly not buying it through CCP, but buying it through a third party.
Yes, and looked like the character was only 34 days old when the Titan died.
Mm.
And apparently he bought the Titan on the same character that he moved it with, which is not a very good idea. And there's a whole story of him doing everything wrong with how to move supers.
So he might have been a newer
Read
player.
it.
What's that?
I'd read that story.
I'd read that story, yeah. Well, the first thing is if you're going to make a transaction that can show up on other people's radars, that you want to switch characters so that they don't just stake out looking for that character in system. So that's just a preliminary precaution, but so you buy a valuable item, you hand it to a different character to move it, so that you just take one. That's one precaution, and there's probably other precautions as well. Moving a Titan is not easy to do to begin with, especially when people are aware that you're there. So there is some security by obscurity when you're working with expensive things in EVE Online. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing about the Basgarian Keepstar is, and other free ports like that, is that people camp all the main super jump routes away from that because of people moving supers that they traded there.
It's a honeypot.
And that guy was trying to use downtime to cover his route so that he couldn't get dropped on, and they wouldn't have time to kill him if they dropped on him. But he jumped. He started moving too early, among other mistakes.
Well, that was a precaution that he took then. So what people do, for those that don't know, is you're moving something expensive. Downtime is something that everybody has to have. So the game goes down for 10 minutes or less, but it is a timeout. And so what you can do is refuse to come back after that timeout, and you're stuck in space, but they're not going to kill you. So you jump with basically a minute or so before downtime. So if anything happens, if you get ambushed, they have 60 seconds to destroy you. And if they can't destroy you, the timeout is called and you never log back in, so they can't finish you off. And that's why people jump right before downtime. So he did do that.
Just that he jumped like 10 minutes before downtime.
Well, I see. So 10 minutes is plenty of time to...
Missing the point, isn't it?
Yeah. It's nerve-wracking, though, because if you're doing it, and I've done it before, you literally can't have anything go wrong. So you light the Cyno has to work. You jump to it, and then you... I've done it with 10 seconds to go to downtime, so you can't make any mistakes when you only have 10 seconds. And then if it doesn't work, you have to wait another 24 hours before you try again. But anyway, so that's what that guy was trying to do. Or maybe that was his time zone, because, Chinese players do play in a different time zone, closer to downtime. Well, anyway, Vanquisher dead from Army of Mango. That hurts. Pay all that money for that ship and then to have it destroyed, but it is a target. Okay, so finally with the last few of these, we've been at this a while. Let's see. Fraternity loses a Nix. Again, to Ivana Trade Federation. What was it? Who was it? Yeah, so Fraternity has lost 2 Nixes. Pandemic Horde loses a Nix as well.
That was another Goon Swarmed Red Bomb that they have safe logged in drone regions, like the Titan last.
Good catch. Thank you. Goon Swarm took out that Nix. Do you know anything about that one?
Not really.
Okay.
I just know that there was a ping for Munins to rescue a tackled super, and then soon after a stand down, he's dead.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha. All right, so I think they're operating in Pure Blind, but also near Horde space. So those would be the big kills. I think on the 23rd, which would have been Saturday, we probably covered some of this, but Snuffed, yeah. TNT.
Snuffed Out had 4 Fortizar hull timers on Friday, I think, and a couple more over the week.
Well, they
They've got
lost
one coming out in 2 hours.
That's our next stop. So Snuffed Fortizars under assault. One of them went down to the Imperium. Last kill was TNT. And if they have, let's check the timer board. I don't see it here. Is it under some other group?
So okay, look, somebody just told me about it.
Violent Fortuna, maybe? That's pure
It's
blind.
in Pinecasto. And he said armor timer in 2 hours and 15 minutes. He told me that about 15 minutes ago.
So that's the armor timer. I think these are just final timers, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know why it's not on this board. All right, so Snuff is getting attacked by the Imperium. It's funny because Snuff used to be part of Imperium. Now they're no longer
who
on the
hasn't
same
been
team.
part of the Imperium?
Now they are no longer on the same side. Okay, that is the end of stats today. We have some more stuff we want to go over, though. We'll do another pass at the monthly economic report. We have Jurius here to talk about some of that stuff. Also in channel, you might see them talking is Dutch Gunner, Gregorian Masao. What does your name mean, Gregorian?
I just clicked a random last name for character creation until I found something that I liked, and then came up with a first name that felt like it made sense.
Because it sounds very literary, like that's a character of some sort in literature. Anyway, good choice. We have Jurius Doctor with us, and we also have Phantomite, who's running for CSM. This video came out recently. All right, so those are the guys that are in this room. Let's talk about the monthly economic report. Jurius, this is something you'd like to look at.
Yeah, I quite enjoy it. We are seeing sort of continuance of the degradation of PLEX pricing and a drop in production across ETH. The indexes are still quite suppressed. Things are sitting under 4 trillion. This has been good news, but also interesting. This is along the lines with what CCP wanted to do with their changes. So it's definitely having an effect. And we're seeing a continued fall in bounty payouts. One of the things that we did see remarked on earlier, I don't know if you caught that on stream or if that was pre-stream, but we are seeing an increase in incursion payouts, and I'm not sure if that is an increase in people doing incursions because people are home because of COVID or they're self-isolating, or it's because if that includes the invasion systems in that metric. So it would be good to get greater clarity there from CCP.
I'll pull that up. I think I can find it. It's EVE Online Economy Sinks and Faucets. And I'll widen this out so we can see it a little better. Shows you where the money's coming in and leaving the game. And remember, a great deal of money in EVE Online is transferred between players. So if I mine a rock, I'm taking that ore and I'm selling it to somebody else. That's not an ISK or a sink. That's just transfer of money. And a lot of that happens in EVE Online. But there are true areas where money is sunk out of the game or where it flows into the game through a faucet. And so we're looking at incursion payouts. That's the number 3 at 16 trillion in 1 month. So you think incursions are invasions? Because I don't think incursions are that high.
Well,
normally.
that's sort of what we're looking at is that incursion payouts are up, but is that including kills from invasion systems? Like, how are the invasion systems being tracked as a faucet?
Oh, I don't know. Look at NPC.
Like, I'm wondering if they're counted as against bounties, or are they coming in as incursion money? Like, I'm just wondering how on CCP's side how they've got that lever switched to say where does that report in the MA?
Based on with payout, I would say they're looking at site completion. Like you clear a site, you get ISK.
Yeah, so then if that's the case, then the increase in incursion money has come from the fact that more people are running them, very likely because of COVID, and that people are coming back to the game.
Yeah. Well. All right. So incursions are up. You said something about. Well, let's stay on this here. The EVE Online economy is sinks and faucets. We didn't take a look at it last time, so it's good that we're doing it now. It looks like transaction tax is the leading sink for money, sinking money out of the game, with 23 trillion, basically 24 trillion, and brokers' fees are at 16 trillion. I wonder if those were as high as they are now, because they have new taxes for transactions on the market.
I definitely think the new taxes are playing a factor in increasing that sink value, and I actually think that this is healthy to see that kind of sink. It's also meaning that it's taking some of the velocity off, which is good for traders in the sense that those who are position trading as opposed to swing or day trading are going to have greater long-term gains and more stability in sort of the R lines for how their money's growing. But you're also in a situation where you're actually rewarded for playing longer term bids because you're not being as taxed as often as somebody who's trying to position trade on a day or on a 2-day period.
So,
you're not paying as many taxes.
Right. So what you're saying, just to make it clear to those of us that need it a bit slower, is that the more you move your positions in the market, in other words, the more that you change your price on the market in order to day trade, for instance, like you're constantly wanting to stay on top, the more fees you're going to incur. Therefore, a longer position, the more you sit on something, the better.
Remember when they changed the time? It used to be that you could change your orders like every 60 seconds. Like you had to wait a minute before you could go and change your order. Now you have to wait several minutes. That's part of slowing that process down and also putting a little bit of a slowdown on some of the market tools that allowed them to automate some of that stuff, which is technically a form of botting. But if you, let's say that you're buying and selling high volume, high trade things like ammunition between Amar and Jita, and you're both region trading, moving stuff back and forth, buy where it's cheap, sell where it's high, but you're also trying to maintain the highest price, and you're not doing the, penny listings where you're trying to go 1 cent cheaper than everybody else. So you're not constantly trying to get your stuff sold first, but you're trying to keep your price competitive. So you're updating your orders fairly routinely through the day. Each time you update your order, each time you move something, each time you change your price on an existing order or add a new order because you sell something and buy something new, every time that happens, you're getting taxed. Whereas if you just buy a lot of one thing, wait for the price to climb, and then sell it, you're only getting taxed once.
I see.
So what you're describing, the change pushing us to take up a position and hold it, as opposed to sit there. It's when they put this market change in, botting was one of the targets, but also bot-like behavior was boring, and that was the way to do it. It was brute force. It was 0.01. Sit there and just go 1.01 is higher, 0.01 is higher. That was not engaging. So now you have to put up all the money up front. You have to take up a position that you think makes sense, because you won't be able to change it that often, and if you do, it's going to be expensive to do so. So this rewards planning and having the data and making good decisions, and it will cost people who make poor decisions.
And it rewards people who behave in a way that is strategic or tactical, particularly when it comes to market PvP. In a way here, really the function of CCP when it comes to the market in EVE is to act very much like the SEC in the real world, in the sense that they're looking for opportunities to remove people's monopolistic control of certain areas of the market by allowing other people to establish a foothold in a way that is strategic and allows them to plan over the long term or act in ways that will negatively or positively impact the pricing that other people are holding, so affecting other people's positions. And by holding more people holding more positions, the market gets a lot more stability. It also gets more predictable, and because as Helmar's mentioned it many, many times. This game is an economic simulator of the greatest order. It is the only real-world economy in the entire world where we know everything about how it's working and where everybody's positioned and everything else is going.
They don't market on that very well either. It's usually about spaceships shooting each other.
They will.
I hope they
will
do.
because now they have an ecosystem team that's literally working on this. The market is actually a functional. So one thing that exists now that simply did not exist before the market update was going long or going short on something. You couldn't take up a position because positions were change it by 0.01. There was no such thing as a position.
Yeah, or just
now since you're encouraged, and rewarded for taking up a wise position and punished for taking up a poor position and having to change. Therefore, going long and going short is actually a valid strategy now as opposed to before.
So if you look in voice chat there, Matterall, I linked an article by Seth Barton from MCV Business. It's a business publication where Hilmer Peterson recently had a article that was published about the Eve effect, where people playing Eve develop real-world skills that are applicable to the rest of their lives. And one of the things in that article that he specifically talks about in the actual publication of the magazine is that this is the only economy and social structure in the entire world where we know everything about what goes into it, what comes out of it, how it works, when it moves, and they can predict things about how the real world markets are going to behave based on what's happening in Eve. And it's a far better simulator than a lot of market experts have been able to produce, even for Wall Street. But also that it is able to predict how effective specific individuals will be based on their behaviors and their risk tolerance. So, there's the possibility that down the road, Eve Online might be looked at as a better vetting tool for hiring than a lot of the applications that currently, scrounge through your resumes to decide if you're using the right keywords to make you a good candidate to hire.
You mean because the joining a corporation or alliance is so rigorous that you may see some of the methods adopted
and
used.
CCP has access to your data in the sense that they know how you play, they know how you think, they know what you're going to buy and when you're going to trade it. They know everything about everything you do in Eve. So if you're somebody who goes from, like, Goblins is a great example, takes a trash tier nullsec Nubro corporation, makes it one of the biggest groups in the game. Somebody who's hiring for Cisco would look at Goblins and go, what do you want to make? Here's a blank check.
Yeah, if you can show success in Eve essentially boils down to the understanding of systems and the ability to herd cats. If you show the ability to wrangle people and understand systems at the same time, and you throw that on a resume, if you know how to sell that, then that is a very strong skill set to get hired on.
And there's the possibility that in the future, Hilmar and even Pro Abyss might look at Eve as a way to go, well, let's start selling their data because these people are very valuable to business because of how effective they are at this game and the skills they've developed.
Well, the added dimension that a lot of this is happening both global and electronically, not in person, in the new
across
world.
Multiple time zones with coordination on multiple continents. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and online, basically. We're all online now.
The sandbox nature of this has made this really, in essence, a problem-solving simulator, including and people. And if you show that you're good at solving problems involving people as well as involving systems, you've shown yourself to be a capable individual.
Well, and there's a prominent Silicon Valley publication that recently said, and it's being shared a lot on LinkedIn right now, which is where I saw it, that the future of work isn't remote work. The future of work is work from anywhere. And the thing with EVE Online is that it's a perfect simulator of how those systems can be even more efficient when you introduce extreme transparency and extreme flexibility to workforces and allow them to coordinate internationally across multiple time zones with a common system. This is like Microsoft must be drinking this up. They're like, this is why we have Teams. Just use Teams in SharePoint, buy it, be successful.
I've said for a very long time that enterprise tools apply essentially perfectly to enterprise tools are built, to work in real world business, which is an imperfect system. You can't control everything. These tools apply even better to EVE Online, and it's surprising to me a lot of the development effort that goes into building stuff from the ground up as opposed to adapting enterprise tools.
The difference is enterprise tools are really expensive, and as somebody who installs them for a living, I can tell you that most people aren't going to be willing to pay the $18,000 a year.
I was about to say price is a barrier, but there are free open source solutions that are generally so many enterprise tools. I would say
can we just start with Teams is terrible? Like, I know it's free, but Teams is freaking terrible. Although let's
not talk about using it right.
Discord, even Discord is better than Teams. Sorry, go ahead.
Let's live purely in the world of free open source software, FOSS, right? So if we live purely in that world, I would say every enterprise sector is covered by free open source tools. They aren't always the best, but they always exist. It is exceedingly common practice for organizations to put out their code, their source code, open and free and available, and what they sell is support on top of that. And for hobbyists or for lab purposes, then using the free version without paying for support is entirely a valid strategy. This could be applied to EVE Online organizations to great effect.
I haven't seen that work though. Go ahead, Jurius.
Yeah, one of the things that has definitely become true for my industry, working as an infrastructure specialist, is that I install these systems all day long, and I work and administrate them. And one of the things that with the rare exceptions of companies like Facebook that keep everything behind a curtain of secrecy in terms of how their internal networking and stuff works, we know the systems that are open source that it's based on, but it doesn't mean that the systems they're based on are second tier or anything. It just means that they're dealing with so much information. They're trying to turn certain dials to get greater efficiencies, in the same way that Wall Street will put in site to site high speed wireless to shave a quarter of a second off of trading times, because that means billions of dollars. There's efficiencies there, but there's a lot of ways in which, going back to the MER and going back to the looking at the data from the game, CCP is starting to realize and wake up to the idea that they have an ideal enterprise simulator with a 350,000 to 400,000 person body of test subjects, generating hundreds of gigabytes, if not terabytes, of daily log data that is hugely valuable to people who have the right questions and won't get lost with what we call analysis paralysis, which is when you have so much data that you're not even sure what questions to ask to get started, kind of like a new bro coming into EVE. And you end up in this situation where part of that waking up process is that they haven't realized the next step to monetizing EVE and making it grow as a game, and getting, instead of keeping 52,000 people a year, keeping 500,000 a year out of the million that try it each year, is adopting the things that make the social network successful is the next step. And that's why those agencies, that's why Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these other groups are able to take the data that they have about the people that are in their system and make it work for them, and build tools and interfaces that engage those people more and build more of that sticky loyalty. The MER is just it's the looking glass at the data, but it's not the tools that make the data work for them.
All right, before you bring it back, before we bring it back around to the income we were talking about. Right now we're talking about like real world skills. There is a stigma that we all still have about playing video games, right? And here's I think it's Gladius88 saying, no one is going to hire you on the basis of how well you play a video game. Is that still
Gladius,
true?
I can tell him he's 100% wrong, because I have personally gotten a job people for that skill.
Both of you have?
I have been responsible for hiring of people, and I looked at somebody's
been on the
resume.
hiring end. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, I looked at somebody's resume, and they're like, you're a top tier spec person rating with an international guild in WoW. You coordinate it and you do it 4 nights a week. Well, first of all, I feel sorry for your girlfriend. Second, when do you want to start?
So as a hiring person, you
I've hired support people based on their ability to deal with that amount of information, because it's not just the ability to troubleshoot. You want to hire for character and train for skill, and skills easily
that's
trainable.
very,
And I
very
do the
true.
same thing with EVE Online all day.
Say that one more time, just in case nobody got that.
Yeah, for the people in the back, hire for personality, train for skill. New bros coming into EVE Online are eminently trainable, because nobody plays this game if they're not smart enough to handle the skill wall. And I honestly think 50% of people that people write off as being dumb, they're not dumb, they just haven't received the right teaching. And the thing with coming to EVE Online is that it is a perfect parallel for the hiring process in the real world. If you look at somebody, I don't care, learned to troubleshoot. I can teach you how to troubleshoot a server. I can teach you how to troubleshoot somebody on the other end of the line, the Karens of the world who are calling in because they forgot their password. I can train for all of that. I care if you're positive, well organized, thoughtful, well spoken, and can make a good point. And people who can coordinate or work in large groups cooperatively in a video game, they have those skills. They're sociable. They know how to interact with others. They know how to keep the morale up and have fun. They generally fit into the culture of the company really, really well.
All right, point taken. And I'm going to go to Fonsway in a second, but I do want to double down on that, because if you learn nothing else today, this is the thing to learn. And I've watched a lot of, even if you go to LinkedIn, and I've seen other sources as well, if you look at a lot of IT professional managers that hire, they ask them, what are you looking for in an IT person? And that's exactly what they say. They hire somebody that they can mold into what they need, because technology moves too fast to hire a specialist. If you hire someone who's really good on a certain system, even if it's a big system, that system might be eclipsed in the next 2 or 3 years. And then you got a specialist that you're not sure you even like, because he has a terrible personality, but now you don't even know if his skills will transfer over to the new technology that your people are using for. So it's a very interesting world, and I'll just extend on it a little bit more. My wife, being a teacher, tells me all the time that we are training kids for jobs that don't even exist yet. And that's how fast technology is moving. So you don't train kids to plug them in anymore. You train them to be able to be adaptable, especially technologically. And now, Fonsway, on the other side of it, you said, what, you got hired because of it?
Yeah, I have gotten jobs and gigs due to skills that I've shown in gaming scenarios, experience that I've had. I mean, obviously, it's not the only thing on my resume, but like, depending on the audience that I'm dealing with, I will absolutely throw in World of Warcraft experience, EVE Online experience. I said it before, and I'll say it again. EVE Online is a problem-solving simulator that involves systems and people. And if you can show yourself to be successful in such a scenario, then that is a strong skill set. And any hiring manager, any business person is going to recognize that.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Somebody said they wouldn't hire someone hopping corpse because they show no loyalty.
Right. So you can extend that as well. You can see, okay, well, how does someone behave when they're tossed into a sandbox? When all the rules are taken away, what is their behavior? And that speaks a lot to their personality. I'll expand on something that Julia said earlier. It's sorry, actually, I lost that train of thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Akula, let me just jump to another joke. Akula also says, you have been ganked in Jita twice now. No job for you. That's pretty funny.
Online is the only game that it's the only game I've ever played that somebody told me to play simply because of my real life skills. Every other game I've been recommended, because it's fun, because of this. EVE Online is the only game where somebody said, hey, you have the right kind of skills. I think you should play EVE Online with me.
Yeah. Somebody said, well, someone like Gobbins is already probably a manager of some sort. And I can tell you he is not. He's a very smart guy, but it's not his management is not his discipline. So, what he's built with Horde, I wouldn't have called them a trash tier New Bro Alliance. They had some financial backing, and not to take anything away from the guys that started Horde and even Gobbins that inherited it early on.
I'm just joking there.
But
the Nelson Crash Talk.
But he's grown them into a monstrous corporation. That's all his own visionary leadership.
I have huge respect for Gobbins. I really do.
I know you do. I'm just making the point that he doesn't come equipped to do that because that's his professional life, although many people are. He does something else in real life, but that's just his ability
You
to do
actually, I don't think you noticed it, but you raise a really good point that a lot of people miss, especially in hiring, is that I have a lot of new bros in the real world that don't even play Eve that I mentor, and one of the things that comes out of that is that I often have junior people in the company ask me, you know, how do I go get that job, or how do I go get into that thing? And I say to them, become the type of person and adopt the behaviors and the mentality that people who are successful at that job have. Like, adopt those personality traits, adopt those ways of thinking, read the books they read, become the type of person who is successful at that job. It's not good enough to say, when I get that job,
works for
everything will be
dating
better.
too, by the way.
Yeah, it works for dating too. If you want to get a date and you want to stop being a lonely incel, stop being a dick to women.
Hey, stop being mean to the audience, okay?
Stop being mean to the audience.
These guys,
you know, like
everybody watching this show is just like you.
Yeah,
the point I wanted to expand on earlier.
Exactly.
So Jurius mentioned that CCP has the golden data. Well, I mean, that's the term that I use. He said that they know everything that you do. And it's true. They showed us a little slice of it in the Your Year in Eve videos that they gave us around the New Year's. But the data science department is an untapped gold mine as of right now in CCP. They, I believe, I don't know if the position is still open, but recently they were hiring one single position there. I imagine that they're intending to expand that department further, but it would definitely behoove them to double down on that, because as we know in today's world, behavior is gold. You know, recording of behavior. You know, that's everything tracks you on the internet. Everything watches, and people pay for that information. And CCP has some very, very, very interesting behavioral data on a large group of people.
Okay.
So I think that could be easily monetized.
Let me give you some pushback here, because I want to be realistic, because we're hyping each other up on how good Eve is for our professional careers. And I haven't experienced it yet. In fact, it's been detrimental to mine because I share time with Eve and work. And especially in a home environment where you're working from home, do you really want to hire a gamer? Like, isn't that guy going to be sneaking off and playing video games when he should be doing his work?
Yeah, if they have an unstable personality and they make poor decisions and they waste time on it, and
most people, it doesn't even take an unstable personality. It takes distractibility. It takes
right. So I threw that. That's a strong term. So like I said, the second thing I said, makes poor decisions. An individual that makes poor decisions, you know, is going to be evident. Obviously, you don't want that. You know, you have to examine an entire person. You can't just look at the stuff that they did in Eve and be like, oh, well, you know, clearly they're a winner if that cost them, you know, their relationship or their house or whatever.
Right.
Like we have to be discussing a capable individual to begin with. And I think that's part of the filter that we're talking about. It's you have to be able to sit in an interview and make them believe that you're not a complete screw up that, you know, sleeps all night and sleeps all day and plays games all night.
Yeah.
But, you know, only once you show to be a generally capable individual, then you can bring in, and, you know, I'm successful in this game.
So it may not be your first impression, but it's something you bring in after to show your texture as a human.
I don't lead with it, but when they're asking about my experience and my accomplishments, I will include accomplishments in a video game setting. You know, leading a group of people or leading a development effort, you know, any of these things, these are valuable skills, but you know, you have to balance that out.
Well, there's no denying that what we're doing now, playing with technology, even just talking in stations, playing with the latest in technology that's available to consumers, working on this teleconferencing, working on a global scale on inviting experts in this one particular game to talk about what they do and how they do it. All that kind of coordination and technology meeting in one place. Like, we have over 3,400 people that are part of TIS Discord. There's only 1,000 or 1,200 that are on at the same time or whatever. But the point of how you keep that many people interested and contributing and even cross-contributing is, it's not an accident. A lot of that stuff happens on purpose. It's happened by design. It's happened by reading best practices on how to moderate. and it's a lot of intuition too. So we're breaking ground a lot on how do we deliver information about EVE Online, what's happening out there, what's interesting to watch, what's not interesting to watch, to people that in a way that they could consume it and consume it easier. All these things are not by accident. They happen because you either study and learn how to do it or you experiment a lot. So there's something that comes out of this practice of what we're doing here. It's not a complete waste of time. I'm not sure you can lead a resume with it, but you could definitely make a case for it.
I'd like to respond to something that's been said a couple of times in chat, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So one of the things that has been brought up by several people, and rightly so, and it's one of those weird dichotomies. Video games are considered a waste of time by most of my coworkers, Akola says. Another person says, I'm in academia, and if you mention that you play video games, you get strange looks. Others have said, I don't expect my resume, if I put gaming on it. Like most headhunters are saying, don't put gaming on your resume because you won't be looked at as a serious candidate or thought of as serious. This is really, really interesting to me because we're at a point where the data bears out that people who are good at video games and who develop the ability to coordinate with others in video games are actually strongly correlated towards having the ability to be highly trainable in complex systems in business and very likely to be successful in management roles, even if it's low tier management, like team leading a call center. On the other side, the public opinion is very far behind that. And the thing is we know it takes at least 7 years for any change in this data to get to the public in a way that they're even exposed to it, and probably another 7 years before they adopt it as self-evident. And as the example for Akola, who works in academia, when a researcher reveals something in their research, whether it be physics or archaeology or whatever, it's going to take them 2 to 3 years to publish. It's going to take another 2 to 3 years for it to get to science magazines like Science or Nature or the American Archaeological Association or whomever, and then it's going to take another 3 or 4 years for the news agencies like the Wall Street Journal or New York Times to pick it up, and then eventually it gets in front of people, and then Fox News has an article about it, and then the rest of America hears about it. So you're talking like 10 years before we learn about stuff that was new 10 years ago. The same thing is true of video games today. The first Slate cell phone didn't come out till 2007. To some of us, that's like, wow, that was so recent. To other people, they're like, wow, that's so long ago, depending on when you were born. But the idea that video games look bad on a resume is 20-year-old information. And
but that's who's
everybody has
hiring.
it stuck in their minds.
I know, but that's who's hiring, at least from my generation. It's, but there's a difference. And I think Tripty puts his finger on it here. He says, because he's agreeing with Akula, who's basically saying Akula first says video games are considered a waste of time by most of my coworkers, and I could agree with that. And Tripty does too. He says same experience. And the people who shun the games are the type who would really be good at EVE Online. And so I think it's a little bit different, right? We can kind of, as adults, as mid-aged adults, talk about EVE Online in a way that's more serious than just a video game, because it seems like EVE Online players aren't even really video game players. We're a different breed.
I did want to bring up is that it's actually really consistent. As somebody who is very much in other video game communities, it's like I look at EVE and I look at everybody else, and there is this line that's just like EVE players don't see themselves as standard gamers. Right. Sorry for the hard R, but like it's not a thing that correlates direct with each other.
Mind you, the rest of the gaming community doesn't look at us like them either, because I've asked friends in other MMOs, would you like to come play EVE? And they're like, no, I've already got a job.
Yeah,
exactly. So
there's also the fact to consider that the workforce is getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
Management is getting younger and younger, and that includes hiring. These people see games differently. So when someone says my coworkers do this or my manager's that, these people, these older people in these positions still exist, but this is changing extremely rapidly.
Well, I think it's not only that. So there's a new generation of people coming in. There is a lag time of trends shifting, saying video games, depending on the complexity of it, might be okay to hire. But you also have people who are older and who have held the position of saying, yeah, I'm not hiring a gamer. That's somebody who's distracted all the time. That they may actually be open to hearing, look, times have changed. Look at this generation of people who grew up playing video games. Problem solving electronically, essentially, is what a video game is. And you're, if you want to be hip to what's going on with the younger people and not be considered a dinosaur as a manager, you need to look at this again, and you need to pay attention to what can be utilized in here, if anything. So I think that pressure is going to build as more and more older people say, okay, I don't want to be considered obsolete, so I better look at this again. Because I'll tell you this, once COVID started, all the stuff that I was doing before COVID that was a joke and a hobby and something that was a competitor of time is now kind of seen as pretty advanced. Like, you were doing this stuff before everybody else had to do it. And you're, no longer is it a play thing. Now it seems like it's kind of a serious thing.
So I'll draw a parallel from social media. So we're social media began way back. I mean, I don't know exactly where it began, but I'll pick a point. So let's talk about GeoCities web pages, home pages. You had your own little home page, and it evolved from there slowly but surely. You had Facebook and Twitter, and you end up with all these things. Initially, when these things were all brand new, this was like, you spend all your time, you're a nerd, you spend all your time, on a web, building a website, you spend all your time, just flicking through Facebook, wasting whatever. But at this point, if you, for many jobs, they look specifically at your social media presence, not like in a policey kind of way, like, what has he said, but more looking like accomplishments and achievements. Like LinkedIn is a whole social media network designed specifically for business. And now it's to the point where it's like, well, where is your social media presence, as opposed to, I can't believe, this guy spends all his time on Facebook. This guy's, a nerd, he builds websites. And gaming is kind of following a very similar trend, in which it will be not just acceptable, but desirable to show that this is your extracurricular activity where you do something organized with other people. And when you show capability and leadership in that arena, then it's just capability and leadership.
The other side of that, a real world example, I work for a company with approximately 250, 300 people in it. And of course, the senior leadership team, they're definitely in the category of either being boomers or really early Gen Xers. I have had the CMO come to me and say, I hear you're really good with spreadsheets because you play Eve. Can you help me with the spreadsheet?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm still skeptical. Like, I still won't put it on my resume, even though I've built TIS to what it is now. I still don't think it belongs there. I still have that separation. And I hope that before I finish my work days or my career, that it does come to a point where if you play Space Engineers or you play Kerbal Space Program or you play EVE Online, these games that are high-level problem solving and social, that counts for something. I do hope we get there, and I hope it happens soon. I still think, though, if you're playing Final Fantasy, Pokemon, or any of these other things, that's a different level of gaming than what you're doing with EVE Online. So,
well, that largely excludes a lot of the social element. Like the thing that makes EVE so unique in this regard is the depth and breadth of the sandbox. It's the level of freedom. The less rules there are, the more room there is for excellence. You jump into EVE and there's pretty much no rules. The career chart is massive. You could make up your own job if it doesn't already exist. The fact that it's so open out there is kind of like a show me what you can do.
Yeah.
And it's really there. I don't think that there's any other video gaming context that is quite as free form as this.
There's a couple of points here. Emperor the Paladin says something interesting. He says, wasn't there a story about air traffic controllers looking for gamers since they seem to have what they need? That makes a lot of sense, right?
There was
that's a very specific skill set.
Yeah.
There was some type of report or something done on like how the military chooses drone pilots, but from video gamers because it's something that transfers a lot.
That's
So,
the
Well, that just makes sense.
that's the dark side of things.
that is the dark side, but there are these crossover points. One thing that I did want to
I
mention.
mean, that's a direct translation.
Yeah, I mean, but let's just leave. Let's
leave that.
We'll
there.
say yes and leave that as it is. But one thing that I do want to mention, and Okulu brought this up, is that you could be, developing these skills, and I think this is important. Is that you can be developing these skills in a video game, but you can also be doing it in volunteer work. Now, one thing that I did want to mention is that when it comes to learning, if you are more engaged into what it is that you're doing, because you will not only learn better faster, you also retain the knowledge more. So I mean, I would say that they are both advantageous in both regards, because if you enjoy volunteering, that's great, but if you enjoy video games, this is also good, because either way it's about the learning, not the vehicle.
I do apologize if I'm going to cut anybody off, but I think in these days it really matters in what field are you working. Some fields might be more open to it, but you still need to think if you're more like if you're working in accountancy or you got an administrative business, then you need to look professional. And the general population still associates gaming with not like it's not something that you do professionally. So it really comes down to if you have an interview, and depending on what field you're in, it really comes down to how are you able to translate skills. Like if they're asking for, give me example about handling different difficult customers or other things, that's where you can always come up with, well, it's not professionally related, but this is what I encounter when I'm working online. Like I'm talking with people, I need to settle conflicts. And if you deliver, like if you form your message correctly based on that experience, you can still get a message across. But it's a balancing act. It really depends on what field are you active in, who are you talking to, and how are you able to deliver that message.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, and that is a point that I did want to make, which is, no offense to Jurius or Fonsui, but it sounds like, at least in the areas or in the fields that you work in, one, you guys do play these games, which already gives you a bias, right? Or removes a bias. As such, it's one of those things where if we look at it from the outside perspective, I mean, every time I look at somebody and I say, no, there's professional gamers who can make $100,000 a year easy. They act surprised almost every single time. So I think that is something important to be said, that there is still a very massive stigma attached towards gaming as a whole, and it is still a minority.
Let's wrap this up because we have to move on to one more topic before we go.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. We'll leave it there. There's more to discuss here. You can do it at Talking Stations Discord if you want. And we'll probably take this topic up again. It's something the CCP is pushing. It's not going to go away. That is EVE Online, not only a friendship builder and a social builder and a cure for loneliness, but also a skills builder in an environment where the stakes are lower. But the emotion is real and that sort of stuff. So you can develop your skills in a real simulator. But let's move on, if we can, to something that was just reported here. Where did I lose it to? I'll put it here. It's Twitter. It's not going to come up for me, but CCP is, for some reason, Safari doesn't want to work with Twitter these days. I don't know what's gone on. I'll have to figure that out. But I'll just read this, and it is from, let's see if there's a, yeah. So this week, CCP will be hosting 4 streams on their Twitch channel where they will have the opportunity, where you will have the opportunity, you as the audience will have the opportunity to meet some of the candidates for CSM as they make their case for your votes. So tune in from 18:15 UTC Eve time, starting today. So that is 18:15 Eve time. What time is it now? It's probably 17 something, right?
1646.
Okay, so CCP normally starts at the same time, and that is normally 1800 around there, which is peak Eve time for their streaming. So this week, starting today, you're going to be able to see the CSM candidates make a case for themselves. So check that out. We were also thinking, Talking in Stations, of doing something. We're not going to do the usual candidate interviews. Unfortunately, they are good content because you get to meet people from all across EVE Online. So that was a plus. A minus was it's a lot of work that doesn't really make a difference to the election anyway. But is that a good enough reason not to do them? And we kind of kicked that back and forth. And then it was really just like whoever wants to do them can. And only, I don't know if anyone even said that they would be willing to spend their time interviewing CSM candidates. There might have been one or two people, but they haven't done anything yet. The point is, there's no good at. We've done it for 3 years now. I did it myself 1 year. Did 28 interviews in 2 weeks. I enjoyed them very much, but just don't have the interest to put that much. Sure. So what we were doing is trying to figure out like, well, how can we do something that's fresh? And there's different, the media groups that do stuff for EVE Online try to find a way to break through to people, so it's not the same old boring content. So what you're seeing is there have been some debates on Declarations of War podcasts where they have 3 or 4 different people on. I think this Trash Talk Tuesday show from Redline is going to have debates. I don't know when. I guess Tuesday. So
Saturday. Upcoming Saturday and Sunday.
So next weekend, the Saturday, Sunday coming up.
Yes.
Yeah. Cap Stable used to do interviews a long time ago. Before them was, I was about to say Zenuria, but it's not. Xander he did interviews all by himself, and he did a lot. He did 30? He did a lot of interviews 1 year, and it was great entertainment. When you're at the gym listening to, 40 minutes of an interview with Pro God Legend as he was trying to make a case for CSM was very entertaining. So it is good as far as consuming, but most of the positions are essentially filled by auto voting from members. So it just seems like a waste of time to put together these interviews where people make a case for themselves, and it just doesn't make a difference. So
it's absolutely not a waste of time.
Especially
for the candidates. I mean, if you're looking at the candidates that don't have a block or don't have the network from the get-go, going on podcasts, getting interviews, now with CCP, giving them on a central platform, giving them time to send their message out. That's the way that good candidates are able to step forth instead of remaining in the shadow forever.
Mm-hmm. It is true. You get your name out there and you make some progress, and that may be important for building a case for yourself the following year and maybe the third year and that sort of thing. Personally, I like listening to those interviews because, again, you hear people from all over the game and stuff, and that might be the best part of CSM for the players, but I don't think it makes a big difference. So here, Tiger says, Matterall, TIS block vote when? And don't think I haven't thought of it, but it's not in our interest to. The problem is we like so many people, we would end up not being able to properly endorse people the way we want to. So we probably won't do anything like that. But I'm glad that, okay, so the point is we're not going to do it. We were thinking about it. We were thinking about how to do it. There are other people that are doing debates. We are giving exposure to people like you, Dutch, who is running for CSM, by inviting anybody that's running for CSM to show up on these daily broadcasts and to participate and to talk so people can see how you think and that sort of thing. We were also thinking...
That's a big step. That's a big step, and it has to be a two-way street. I mean, if you're running for something, you want to make sure that while you're doing it, people can see that you're serious about it. And this way, giving the opportunity for people that are willing to step up, even if they're relatively unknown or if it's their first time running for CSM like myself, it's giving them the opportunity can make all the difference in the world, because this way they got the opportunity to be heard, get their message across. And even if it might not get them in the CSM in the first go, it does get them on the radar. And it could be that other CSM candidates hear the message and they go, that's a good point. We haven't thought about it. We'll take it with us if we get into CSM. So it's a really important thing. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is that people get the opportunity to get in that, to get their message out, to step a bit more into the spotlight. But they have to be willing to put in the effort. They have to reach out. They have to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you're doing. Should say Jurius is also running for CSM in here as well. And we've had other people come in that are running for CSM too. So you guys are putting in the effort to show up. So here's the thing I wanted to get to. So CCP is doing something great. Other groups are doing something, like Trash Talk Tuesday is going to do some stuff. That's great too. And we were thinking the other day, how do we participate in this and how do we help out? And again, we open this channel up every day for CSM people to come in here and to talk and to show how their mind works and how they participate in a group, how they're polite, how they're not polite. But why not do, and I'm just throwing this idea out there, a mock summit with CSM aspirants, basically. People who want to be on CSM, put them in 10 at a time, and we throw out questions like we think maybe CCP would throw out questions and say, this is a summit for the next hour. We're going to go over these 3 sections and you guys participate. And, and moderate it so that it doesn't, so one person doesn't eat up all the talk time, but basically do it and show how people would perform in that kind of environment, what kind of ideas they come to mind. What do you guys think about that sort of format?
I think it's a great idea.
It's fantastic. It does require a bit of balancing, because if I'm looking at Trash Talk Tuesday, their format initially is a split between people backed by null blocks and those who don't, and that's the kind of separation you don't want to have. You need a fair spread of different people. So don't put everybody from a null block in one of those meetings and everybody else in another. You need to spread the coverage out a bit, and then you have a fantastic platform.
One thing I will say is that for it to be successful, and some platforms like Talking Stations may do better than others, you need really strong, really firm arbitrators to run it, because otherwise you will have people just running away with the time. And I'm one of those people who, I love to talk. I love the sound of my own voice. I admit there will be times when I talk too much.
You sound like, I love to eat.
Every now and then it's good. It's good to just have somebody say, okay, you've had your turn. Next person.
Yeah.
That's crucial, because you have people who are willing to, like, okay, this is a debate, so I want to hear what somebody has to say, and then I can present a counter argument. And then you got people who just go like, no, let me finish. And then when somebody lets them finish and tries to reply, they get interrupted all the time. So it definitely needs a strong arbitrator to manage it, but I like it. I really do.
So a mock summit idea for CSM candidates. Instead of we don't want candidates to fight each other. That's not what a debate is. But I think maybe they're trying to get to the same thing. It's like, how do you guys perform against each other, working out ideas with one another? And I don't know how it would be different yet, so I would have to do a little more thinking about it. But yeah, something like a mock summit. And I think the realistic world is that you're going to be sitting there with 6 people, 7 people that are nullsec. And how do you just agree with them? Are you completely outclassed by them? Do they know the stuff more? It's just like, how do you behave so that you're not just an empty seat at these summits? And that might show you, I think it might show you where mature people can make some headway in a room when you're talking about a business enterprise, as opposed to a troll candidate. That's an easy contrast, right? Who's in there to be a jokester or whatever. You might be able to distinguish yourself as an adult. And if you are somebody who's spicy, that you might be someone who actually has a really, really good grasp on techniques or feedback or the vibe of EVE Online players. I don't know. There's got to be some way to distinguish yourself as someone who can sit in that room. That's what we're trying to get. All right.
It's definitely a good step forward. It gives you an opportunity to see how different people respond in that specific situation. And one thing I'm certainly hoping for is that it's less about null block versus the rest, or at base, or the rest versus the null blocks, because that's not going to be beneficial to CSM. That's not going to be beneficial to the game. It should be you're there together. You got different fields of expertise. You got personal from personal experience that you can bring issues forward. You can be reached out. You can be contacted by different players, and if it's not part of your main specialty, you can still bring it up, and you got other people who might be able, from their perspective, with their expertise, fill in some of the gaps or give a better explanation on why it's an issue or possible solutions to solve the issue, or at least improve the situation. It's something that you need to work together. It's
Right.
not where you clash heads.
One of the problems is we're not going to get Nullsec to show up, except maybe Villy, who's generous with his time and comes here a lot, but you're not going to get a Gobbins
Or
in there.
Brisk.
You're certainly not going to, or Brisk would be here, but you're not going to get, you're not going to get 4 or 5 people right off the bat that are going to be on CSM to show up to something like that.
I don't think you'd get Aerith.
But he's not running again, but we wouldn't get any of the Goonswarm guys there. They have an aversion to talking in stations. I wonder why. So we would get, maybe we get former CSM if it works out. It's a lot of work, and it's a service to the listeners, a service to the people who are running for CSM. Otherwise, they really have no other way of getting on or convincing you that they're worth putting there. But
I think another thing that people
easy way is to
forget
put a
about-
block ticket out, right? Like TIS recommends these players, maybe not in this order, but these players.
Yeah, I think one thing that people forget about when they're looking at candidates too is that it is important for a number of the candidates on the ballot to be specialists or very knowledgeable representatives from their gameplay style or from their region of space. But it's also important to have candidates who are not only mature, well-grounded, able to communicate as a group, but also the kind of person who, to use the example of Natural Manager, they don't need to know everything that the people on their team know. They need to know who to ask, and they need to remember the answer.
Yeah. All right. That's it, guys. It's closing in on 2 hours. Any other little announcements we need to take care of before we go?
Bye, Pyro.
Oh, really? Oh, why is Plex falling, by the way?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah,
a good question. It's
Don't know.
probably a
Plex done been
combination-
falling.
It's a combination of a lot of things, but like,
seem to
yeah.
stabilize.
Well,
Putting the
we've had
Plex market on the mobile app didn't help either.
mobile. I mean, like, I don't know, potentially less people playing because not many people are able to afford the subscriptions. Plus, which is weird because that would probably shoot up the price of Plex. But like,
It's
not many
okay to
people
say
can
we don't
afford to
know.
inject. Yeah,
It's okay.
it's just like it's so many factors. But I'm one of the main leading things I know for a fact is the war on botting, which is already taking its massive toll.
You
Just
just
less
reminded me that
accounts.
I have Plex buying at my fingertips on my phone, so I'm looking up the prices right now.
But yeah, so like what I think the biggest thing is the war on botting and just the fact that there's less accounts being plexed in general in the so that's just gonna throw the price down.
And I think there's a bit of speculation, because one thing players noticed was that the prices stayed very stable, and there was even a slow rise over time. So if you had these, it was a sure bet investment. And when prices start falling, there's going to be people who say, you know what, I'm going to take the hit, I'm going to take my loss, I'm going to liquidate the Plex that I have, and I'm going to look for the next thing. And then they'll just take the buy orders, and then the buy prices start to fall, and you can get a snowball effect. But there definitely isn't a single defining reason or explanation for why they're dropping.
Yeah. So
just less active accounts, I think, is the most important thing because that's what really drives this.
Yeah,
so
but there's
regardless of what's creating them, I think just less accounts being Omega in general.
Yeah. Well, looking at PLEX, it is relatively stable for the last few weeks, or last week, at least 2 weeks at 2.5 million per unit. So it's not, and then a low PLEX price isn't necessarily bad. It actually means that your labor in the game is worth more in real life than it was before. So it's kind of a good thing. It means what you do in EVE is more meaningful because it is stronger against that currency conversion. That if you do the mathematics and the relationships, you realize that $1 is worth this much time in EVE Online, and you could do those kinds of calculations. They're not perfect, but you get the idea. And so your time in EVE Online is more valuable if you roll it back to currency than it was. It'll never be parity, right? Like you're much better off paying $20 for your account time than you are trying to earn it in the game. You will lose a lot of hours trying to earn that in the game, which is why people do it with bots or try to do it with bots. Okay, enough of all that. We're getting way deep again. Thanks, guys, for showing up today. We'll go ahead and wrap up and go to raid somebody. Thanks for joining. We'll see you tomorrow, and we'll let you know about CSM stuff and if we're going to do. Again, it's all a matter of contacting a lot of people and getting them to show up at the right place at the right time, and to get enough people to make it viable, et cetera, et cetera. Takes a lot of organization.
In about an hour and 15 minutes, there will be the first of the 4 streams on CCP's Twitch for CSM candidates to talk more about themselves. So don't miss out on that one.
Excellent. All right, everybody, enjoy Bjorn B. He's always fun to watch. And we will see you tomorrow.